One of the most common barriers that I see as people begin to make health changes is not a lack of willpower. It's this. They're not prioritizing their own self-care. Not truly, because deep down, they haven't accepted this very important role, this very important shift, the shift to becoming their own primary caretaker. And until you make that shift, everything else will become a struggle. But here's the good news. You don't have to wait for anyone else to make this shift. You can do it today. But here's the bad news. Most of us are not great caretakers for ourselves. But more good news, you can learn. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's dive in. We've all been here at times. I've been here too, looking outward for that person, right, that is going to care for us. Who's that person who's going to see me? Who's that person who's going to give me that opportunity? Who's that person who's going to tell me to stop working, to tell me I've done enough, to tell me that I am enough? Who's that person that's going to be my sponsor? Who's that person who's going to care for my emotions? Who's that person who's going to give me compliments because I'm not doing any of these things for myself? And the truth is that sometimes these people do show up for us, and that's really beautiful. And sometimes we do these things for other people, and that's also really important. But if we are relying only on these outward sources, we will end up being starved, right? It will leave us feeling starved. And that's what we want to shift, right? That's the power of this shift. Okay, now this is important because this is not about not needing other people. This is not about being sort of the lone wolf, the lone warrior, right? We still need other people. We need family, we need friends, we need community who at times care for us. And we need that opportunity to care for others, right? That's a really important part of the human experience, is building and experiencing that connection, right? We are all fellow travelers in this life, and we want to show up for each other. But this care that we give and receive for each other is best received on nourished soil. And the nourishing comes from our own ability to care for ourselves, right? The task is to become our own caretakers so that that soil is nourished and hydrated and has that baseline health in it already. And then when people cross our paths and they offer their care to us, it's not received in drought, right, or starvation or lack. It's received in abundance, and we can receive it and we can bring it in, and then we have enough and overflowing to give back, right, to others as well. That's what we're talking about. We still need other people, but we need to be that primary source of care for ourselves. Okay, so I'm going to teach you 4 skills that will help you make the shift into becoming your primary caretaker. And the first one is to give yourself permission. And in that space, it's important to know that self-care is a need. It is not a want. It's not something you earn or you have to deserve. It is a need, right? It is a requirement. It is a need for all of us to be cared for. So just take that off the table, right, of thinking you need to earn it or have done a certain amount before you can give yourself that care. There's a quote by a teacher, Parker Palmer, who was a Quaker teacher. I'm going to read it to you because it's so beautiful and I think really applies here. He said, "Self-care is never a selfish act. It is simply good stewardship of the only gift that I have to give, the gift I was put on this earth to offer to others. And anytime I can listen to true self and give it the care it requires, we do so not only for ourselves, but for the many others whose lives we touch," right? This is an act of actually service. It allows us to be our best so we can offer our best. Self-care is a need. You don't never have to earn it. So give yourself that permission. That's the first step. The second step is to set boundaries, right? And I think one way I think about this is, who do I need to say no to, or what do I need to say no to in order to say yes to my self-care? And this does not mean that you're just going around saying no all the time, right? But being conscious of, where do I need to say no so I can say yes more openly and more freely to my own self-care. And this is important, right? Because no one else will say no for you. It's not their job. It's no one else's job to hold that boundary for you. They have no idea what your capacity is. They have no idea what your priorities are. They have no idea what you feel like your purpose is on this life, right? And how you want to spend your time to fulfill that. They're just asking, right? If you can do this thing for them, or if you can do this thing with them, or you can be this person for them, or whatever they're coming to you asking you for. And you have to decide, what do I say yes to and what do I say no to? The other thing that's important to know is that you're not in charge of their reaction, right? So they might not like the way that you respond. They might not like that you said no, but here's the good news. They are their own caretaker, so they can worry about that. They can support themselves through that. You don't have to worry about that, right? And you're not saying no to them all the time. You're just aware of when you need to say no so that you can say yes to your self-care. So only you are in charge, the things that you are in charge of. Let's talk about that. You are in charge of your reactions, right? You're in charge of your reactions. You're in charge of how you treat other people. You are in charge of how you manage your time and your energy to fulfill your life's purpose. Those are the things you're in charge of, which means sometimes you need to say no in order to prioritize those things, and they can manage their response, right? You're in charge of your response. So set boundaries. That's step 2, give yourself permission and then set boundaries. Step 3 is to establish that foundation. Now that you have said no and set up that space, there needs to be a foundation of core principles, right, of care. And those are pretty well established, right? We know that as humans, we need a certain amount of sleep. We need 7 to 9 hours as adults. Are you getting that? Are you setting the boundaries in place to get that sleep? We know that we need certain building blocks in our food supply and the things that we eat for our bodies to feel strong and energized and cared for, so it can heal, so it can fight off colds and insult and injury, right? We need a baseline of nutrition. Are we setting that in place? We know that we need movement, right? For our muscles to stay strong and for our flexibility and balance and all those things. We know that we need emotional care, right? We need a way to process and hold space for our emotions. And we know that we need love. This is an important one. Are we loving ourselves? Are we giving ourselves that loving kindness that we offer to others, right? That is a core need. It's not a luxury. Again, it's not something you have to earn. That is a need. So step 3 is building in a foundation of care that incorporates all of those things on a consistent basis. So what does that look like? And then step 4 is to notice the shift when you're beginning to look outward, right? When you are beginning to look out for that other person to come in and care for you, and where that should be shifted back internally, right? So oftentimes that looks like resentment. It looks like frustration or anger, right? Where there's a need that you have that you were expecting someone else to meet and they didn't. And what can you do to shift that back so that you can meet that need for yourself, right? And again, it's not to say that we are that lone wolf just kind of taking care of our own needs in a silo, but being that first line, right, to care for ourselves and then bringing others in as needed to support that, right? That secondary caretaking. That's important. So those are the 4 steps. Give yourself permission, set boundaries where you need to, establish that foundation, and then notice when you have shifted back outward. Okay, so here is the challenge for this week. Here's the application. I want you to think about one area in your life where you can show up more fully for you, whether that's just being kinder to yourself, whether it's establishing that baseline of nourishment through the way that you eat, whether it's movement, whether it's getting enough sleep, whatever it may be, just pick one, right? There's so many areas most of us could go, and that's totally fine. It's a journey, it's a process. But for this week, pick one thing that you can prioritize and then find those boundaries that you need to set into place and set that consistency and begin that process of self-care in one small, simple way this week. And here are some important messages as we bring this to a close. First of all, I want you to know that you have this in you. You do. And chances are you are already showing up beautifully as a wonderful, amazing caretaker for somebody else in your life, maybe many people in your life. All you need to do now is turn that inward and become that for yourself. Maybe easier said than done, but really helpful to know that you have these skills in you. It's just a matter of shifting them inward. The second thing that's really important is this is not about perfection, right? It's never, ever about perfection. It is about consistency, right? And about trying again and showing up again and again and again along this path and building these skills on a consistent basis. That's really what it's about. And it will be messy and imperfect. And that's part of the beauty of the process. So all of that is totally fine. If this landed for you, please hit subscribe and share in the comments. I'd love to hear what's one small act that you will take this week to care for yourself, to be your own primary caretaker this week. I would love to hear. I'd love to hear what landed. I'd love to hear what you want to work on this week. Don't forget to click subscribe for more videos on how you can build that life of health and well-being. And I will see you in the next video.